Hello, this is Jean, and this is my YouTube channel, which I've titled Multidimensional Sound. I started this channel about 2.5 years ago as a way to share my light language and paintings that I had been creating that I encode with light language. And I am taking a step out of my comfort zone today to actually show my face. Today is 11/11/19, and it marks a portal, a gateway. New beginnings are going with the number 1, and I have a life purpose number of 11, which has to do with creativity and expression. So I'm stepping out of my comfort zone today on 11/11 to introduce myself and to tell a little bit about my journey with light language. I first heard light language in 2010. I was listening to a webcast with a woman named Judy Satori. It was titled Energy Preparations for 2012, and it caught my interest. At one point in her presentation, she had requested that people stand and put their hands out to receive energy activations from her light language. And I did as directed, and when I heard the light language, I just burst out laughing. I thought it was one of the funniest things I had ever heard. And yet I found myself wanting to hear it more. And I continued to listen to Judy's programs for several years and attended some of her live events, including an event in the fall of 2013, which is 6 years ago now, November of 2013, in which she offered a class to activate light language. So I went with it. I knew I was supposed to be there, and I was really happy to find myself in a room full of other people who love the light language, and many of them already spoke it. So that was a real turning point in my life. And when I came back home, I found that I continued to want to hear it more and more, and felt at the same time very, very bashful and self-conscious about speaking in front of people. It can be rather lonely when you have something like a light language that is not really well known or well accepted. So I found myself out in nature a lot, and this was my audience, these trees here. So I thought it appropriate to have their moral support as I stepped out to introduce myself face to face and tell my story. I tell the story because I've heard that there's going to be a lot more people speaking light language in the coming years, and that so those of us who do should get out there to let other people know about our light language and offer moral support and a community. So I offer this as moral support and community for other people who find themselves drawn to light language and speaking light language. So in college, I studied music therapy. I've always been strongly drawn to sound and singing, and I sang a lot as a child. I played the clarinet in the band. I majored in music in college, music therapy, and as part of our coursework we were learning how music has the ability to cross and touch people on such a deep level, cross any kind of mental, emotional barrier. And we learned about music as the international language, because no matter what sounds, what verbs come from your mouth, when you're handed a piece of sheet music, you read it the same no matter where you are in the world. So I think of light language a lot the same, in that no matter where you are on this planet, light language is received the same, regardless of the language that you speak. And it crosses beyond the conscious mind. It touches the emotional, the mental, the feeling bodies, but without us really comprehending it as a literal language. When I experience light language, it's sort of a sound bath, and I feel it, and sometimes I feel sensations in my body from it, or it will bring me to tears. I truly don't know where it comes from. I have been taught, and it makes sense to me, that it is a cosmic language. It transcends this dimension of physical form, and it comes to us from beyond, perhaps from another aspect of ourselves, living on another timeline where we're accessing this from. I, as Jean, don't know what this language is or where it comes from. I don't have the ability to make it up. And it runs in my mind. I can turn it on or off as quickly as I can do language on or off. And what happens is that I just become the observer of it as the sounds come from my mouth. I never know ahead of time. It's not like language where you compose a sentence or a thought and then speak it. It just flows and you observe it. So the ways I have used light language so far have been to charge crystals, plant them in the earth. I speak light language here. It carries out. There's water here. It carries out over the water. It carries through the air. I use it to put blessings on the water. I use it to work with the earth grids, to pull in frequencies and balance them and move them out across the planet. I charge food with it. I sometimes just put my hands on myself and speak light language. I saw the light language evolve quite a bit in the first few years that I spoke it. Judy taught that it comes like baby talk. So it's like really very basic sounds at first. Within a year or so, the sounds became much more complex. And sometimes I can feel other beings with me who I feel are influencing the sounds coming through. The trees here have influenced the sounds coming through at times. And sometimes the sounds are very high and fast, and sometimes they're more in my throat. And sometimes they make clicking sounds or guttural sounds. So it changes a lot. So it's a very interesting experience, like I say, to just observe it as it comes through. For me, and I suspect for most people, it's not easy to speak in front of other people because you feel a little goofy, to be honest. So, but I can say that people have told me that I've seen people cry. People are very moved by it. They feel heart expansion. So a very powerful experience for me was charging crystals and planting them around the Capitol and the White House in Washington, D.C. at a time where it felt very turbulent there, and I wanted to do something. I was really inspired and guided to do this around the winter solstice of 2016. So that felt like a really profound experience to me, like another part of me was doing this and knew what it was doing, and I was just sort of following along. I also have gotten images downloaded to me in meditation that I then paint and encode with the language, and it's been quite interesting to see how the paintings have followed a progression of using the elements, including the fifth element of ether, and portraying the progression of light and balance in the body to to the point where we resolve, dissolve trauma, and become more light body, more in our heart, which is what my most recent painting depicts. I feel like they are a reflection of my own personal process, and I share them for anybody who feels resonant or drawn to them. And I'm just grateful to have an application that is fun for me with the light language. So that's the thumbnail story for my experience with light language and how I use it and how I felt using it. And I hope this has been of interest and helpful, and I would love to hear comments or feedbacks. So thanks for joining me. Hope to see you around.